Ex-inmates of Reddit, what was the stupidest thing you've seen a new inmate do on his first day in prison? Told a kid there was a pool out at yard. Guard saw him waiting to go out in shorts with his shower towel and asked him what he was doing. Kid said, "I'm gonna go swimming outside, it looks nice." Don't think I've laughed so hard in my life, it's unoriginal but always funny. This one is strangely wholesome. It's just funny light hazing. Yeah, until you think about the mental age of someone who's so gullible they actually think there's possibly a pool outside at a prison that they can use just whenever, like this kid. You can also hit M with, "Did you get your modernity?" And when they ask you what is, you tell them they'll find out. So they get nervous and go around asking people, "What's the modernity?" We had an infamous repeat visitor in my prison. Let's call him Lenny. Lenny would get out, get roped into some dumb shit, and be the fall guy for said dumb shit. He'd come home, as he called it. Lenny was also a creature of habit. When he first went in, co's being abusive, verbally at minimum, was the norm. So years later when a co said to Lenny, "Lenny, I need you to get out of your cell for a check," Lenny would reply with something like, "F you, co." Because Lenny couldn't understand their authority if they were nice. The appropriate way to speak to Lenny was, "Lenny, get your fat ass out of that cell before I drag you out," in an authoritative voice. And Lenny would comply with a proper, "Yes, sir." Lenny one time was quite happy with a little female co, maybe 5'2", 120 pounds soaking wet. He promptly picked her up and gave her a big hug. Lenny was a good 6'5", 300 pounds. I've never heard a person yell like she did. The things she threatened to do would have Lucifer taking notes. Lenny smiled and complied. Lenny also discovered a sure way to get out of dayroom duty. If he didn't feel like it, he would get himself a pencil, get a patrolling co's attention, whip out his, quite admittedly impressive trouser hog. Seen that picture of the black guy naked sitting on a bed that's been photoshopped into the hospital picture? Think that, except white. Smiling, he would insert the pencil eraser deep into his giant meat log and lay about half of it onto the table. He'd yell, "Hey, co." Before promptly punching his dick, and with an audible snap, the pencil would break. Lenny would get to go to medical for a few days and not have to clean the dayroom. Lenny stopped showing up a few years back. He was in his late 50s. We're pretty sure he's no longer with us, but nobody really wants to look it up to confirm. I'm assuming dayroom duty is like chores. I can't imagine anyone that would be willing to snap a pencil off in their urethra to get out of chores. Lenny definitely sounded like an interesting individual. He was quite possibly the most interesting person I ever met. In both the best and worst ways. He was pretty screwed up and needed help he wasn't getting on the outside. He'd usually come in like a tornado, get his meds right, calm down, still do some crazy shit like his pencil trick on occasion, but would be a mostly model prisoner by the end of his stretch. Then he'd be back for parole violations or new crimes in a few months. I'm pretty sure they just washed his stuff and set it aside after a while, rather than getting new stuff together for him. Sounds like he was institutionalized, which is heartbreaking. Probably homeless when he got out, if you live in a place where a home plan isn't mandatory for release. He had family, but he probably would have been better off homeless. His cousins and uncles were co-defendants on a few of his cases, if that gives you any idea of what he came from. But yeah, he was absolutely institutionalized. Kid came in and, I assume he has watched a lot of movies cause he figured he'd fight the biggest guy on the range. Lol. He wasn't even the toughest guy in the hospital he woke up in. When little Timmy stole a car. To go to space, he said. He didn't make it very far. And went to jail instead. A prison's full of fearsome folk. His father warned him, "Rough. You have to make your mark," he spoke. "To show them all you're tough." So Timmy chose the biggest six. And loudly, proudly cried. "I hear you've all got tiny dicks." And Timmy F died. Tell literally everyone how he was going to escape and showed off all the tools he was using. Was he stopped by the other inmates or by guards? There was a mole. A snitch. Within hours of him trying to saw his way through the bars with the threads of the waistband of his underwear, we were searched and he was removed. In all fairness, he was awaiting trial and looking at 50+ years. 50's a ton. What did he do? He ate cereal with water. Ate a candy bar found on his pillow. Is that bad? Yes. Even a small piece of candy can indebt you to someone in prison. Best advice is to say no to any offers. No matter what. Some guys told a new guy that if he told the guard he was suicidal, the guard was obligated to give him a cigarette and let him smoke. What really happens is they take away all your shit, throw you in a turtle suite, and put you on suicide watch for 2 days in an empty cement room. I hated jail, but goddamn I had some laughs in there. We had a county jail with a policy of sending inmates to the county mental health facility if they claimed they were suicidal. Since the mental health facility was a lot nicer than the jail, they got a lot of inmates claiming to be suicidal, so they tightened up the requirements a little. One guy had been successful with this the last 2 times he was in, and the sheriff was sick of having to pay out of his budget, so they kept asking questions on how he planned to do it, etc. Guy ended up naked in a cell with no TP, sheets or mattress. I did 14 years in federal prison for wire fraud. I got out last February. I'm 36. Some things I can say are these. While your sexuality may not be an issue outside of prison, inside prison, male inmates who are openly gay are generally disrespected. Gambling and drugs create debts that are at some point unable to be paid and can result in serious issues for yourself. Most prisons operate a social hierarchy based on gang affiliations or hometowns, although there can be large separations based on race. However, rapists and child molesters will basically be free game for anyone who wants to take their shit or torment them. You might have been the baddest outside of prison, but generally you can't fight several people at once, which is what would happen if you talk about how much of a badass you are. Keep your shit to yourself and don't talk crazy to people, which is seen as disrespect. Disrespect has a different meaning in prison, and you'll figure it out. Best to just keep to yourself unless as much as possible, unless you want to embrace prison life and become institutionalized. Prison is not a place to make friends. I had a friend who had done some time, and he was such an interesting storyteller. He could go on and on, side threads woven back to the main story. I assumed it had something to do with having lots of time to talk in prison. Maybe people are true friends, but surely you can tell jokes and laugh and shit, right? Yeah, like the majority of the time you sleep, the other majority you just talk shit. I've probably heard the same story 3 times from this guy in a week, but F it, you meet some good people that just want to better themselves and go home, and some who are garbage. I've met some really cool guys who F with me and didn't want shit back, but I also would help them, you know. Most of these stories are about the minority who try to get out on everyone and usually are known for it. On the yard, some polished guy went up to every single man and shook hands and introduced himself. Hello, I am Pavel. Where'd you do time? Here on the EC. That wouldn't garner any hate. Some dudes would probably think he was weird, but that'd probably become an inside block joke. Hello, I am Pavel. Lamau, I could imagine that being a bomb inside joke. Just a funny one. Telling new guys to get their mattress stamped. They come in and we would tell them they had to bring their mat up to the guard and get it stamped with their name and bunk number. They go up to the bubble, mattress in tow, and the guards tell them there is no such thing. They turn around to 100 dudes clapping and laughing. Till prison is boot camp. Except we also told people they needed to water test their seat bags. Not prison, but I was in juvenile hall. This was in Minnesota, and racial division isn't as strong up here, so even though I was half white half Hispanic, since I was loosely affiliated with a blood gang, I was allowed to walk with the black guys in there, but I mostly kept my mouth shut and only got into fights when someone put hands on me. So this bigger black dude comes in for assault, and since he was a Crip, he was beefing with the group I was in, and he starts talking shit about how our group was weak for having a white kid in it and took shots at me. He got cocky and started pushing me around, so I pushed him back, and then he tried to tackle me, but I got him in a front face lock and kicked my legs back to drag him down, and as soon as I had him locked down, I started pushing my fist into his throat to choke him out. Eventually we got broken up by 2 guards, and not gonna lie, I was terrified, but he got made fun of so much for losing to me, not only because I was white, but he was bigger than me, that he immediately lost credibility after that. Wait, so if you were half white and half Hispanic back then, what are you now? The fight gave him enough XP to level up to Puerto Rican. Please see the nearest shopkeeper to collect your golden dagger.